Let's go.
Imagine if I had done any of this. Let me just, I just want to be clear about this.
What's up, folks? What's going on? Welcome to Ichabod. I am your host, Be Good. What's going on with y'all today? Let's get ready to dive into it. Yesterday, we talked about, not yesterday, well, it was yesterday. We talked about the Eminem principle, and we're diving back into the Eminem principle today with a new segment on white privilege. Does Bible God, the God of the Bible, need and benefit from not necessarily white privilege, but something very close like it? And so you heard the clip, but I'll go back to it now.
Imagine that. Imagine if I had done any of this. Let me just, I just want to be clear about this. Imagine that. Imagine if I had pulled Fox News' credentials from the White House press corps. You're laughing, but no, this is what's happening. Imagine if I'd said to law firms that were representing parties that were upset with policies my administration had initiated, that you will not be allowed into government buildings.
We're going to come back to all this imagining in a minute, but one of the ways you know that your political ideology is garbage is if you will allow your leaders to do things that the opposing side, if they were to do them, you would crucify them for. Well, in the same way, one of the ways that you know your religion is not based in truth and reality is if you will allow the defenders of your faith to get away with things that you would never allow another religion to get away with. And so we're going to be diving into what kind of privilege must you grant Bible God in order to let it and its defenders get away with the kinds of reasonings that they offer for why you should still believe them. So yes, come on into the chat. Seeing some friendly faces. What's up, SG? What's up, My Unique Monique? You, Marissa Nato, you made the live. Hey, Aunt Kathy, Sharon Good. Good to see you all. Yes. All right, it's about to go down. So come on into the chat, greet somebody in Reason's name as we get ready to do what we do. Some of y'all had some comments about your top 5 rappers that are alive yesterday. I forgot who it was. Just before I came on, somebody made a comment talking about Raekwon from Wu-Tang is better than Jay-Z. I almost deleted your comment, yo. But this was somebody from the South. So I don't know if you're from the South. I don't know if you could properly gauge Northeastern rappers. So I'm not going to take anything away from you, but just know I had a very hard time liking your comment, but I did it for the sake of the algorithm. So speaking of which, for the sake of the algorithm, go ahead and like this episode while you're here. Please do that. That's one of the ways that you can pay for my time is just by liking the episode or dropping a comment if you're not watching it live. Share it with somebody. And if you're not subscribed, definitely subscribe. But glad you're here. Come on into the chat. Greet somebody in Reason's name as we get ready to dive in. So here you have Obama saying, can you just imagine if I had done any of the things that this administration is doing? I mean, you name it. From Pete Hegseth, first of all, I was going to dive into his Signal chat debacle, but even before you get there, just his being put forward as a possible department head, RFK, Kristi Noem, any of these people, if you look at them and say, why are you putting them forward, and how come we got to sit back and just take these picks of yours. Even if you look at Kash Patel, as unqualified as he is, right? But who's putting him forward? Listen to me now. A white man that the majority of the country has decided to trust, because he puts these people forward. The impression is, well, he must know what he's doing, right? Because this is a white man that we trust. There's a certain amount of privilege that you get by being the right kind of person to be making these choices that no one else is really willing to trust. And especially, here's how you know it's white privilege. Not just a Democrat. Let someone who's not the right color make these kinds of choices and see how quickly the outrage and the withdrawal of the benefit of the doubt, see how quickly this takes place. So you instinctively know, if Obama had done 1/10 of what this administration is doing, not only would he have been crucified, but it would have been proof of just how unfit he is for reasons that are intrinsic to his nature. He gets the benefit of when I say he, now I'm going back to Trump, gets the benefit of the doubt by being a white man doing these ridiculous, questionable, damaging things. You put Doge in place and they're taking apart federal workforce. You put you're going after Social Security. You're giving these tax breaks. You're taking a $400 million plane from Qatar. You're doing a cryptocurrency scam to increase your wealth to the point that 40% of all your wealth, 40% of all your current wealth, you acquired it in 2025 because of a crypto coin. Like, what the hell? Look how much leeway, look how much grace and latitude your privilege has earned you. So I'll play this clip just to help us get somewhere near up to speed.
With Cornell, I mean, is Wall Street just giving Trump a pass that it would never give to a Democratic president?
Oh, absolutely. There is no way. In fact, you're talking about Wall Street. I think even in this country, the people are giving him a pass. I mean, the people gave him a pass when they elected him with 34 convictions. I mean, he has gotten nothing but special privilege treatment. And sadly enough, while he is enjoying this, it is only causing harm and wreaking havoc on us as a country.
So one of the good things that's happening right now politically, just yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, on Fox, no, it was yesterday, on Fox News, one of the hosts on Fox got into a heated argument with their co-host because she was willing to call Trump out for this cryptocurrency scheme or scam and using the presidency to pull it off. Every so often now, you start to see more and more people on the right saying, I was scammed. I did not vote for this. I can't believe this is what's going on. This is not the guy I thought he was. Even Trump, I think, he's making these crazy statements about Putin, like, because Putin is not coming to the table and playing nice with Trump's goals to end the war in Ukraine, and launching these devastating attacks on Ukraine, Trump has the nerve to say, I don't know what the hell's happening to Putin. He wasn't always like this. What the hell are you talking about? Like, you don't know what happened to him. We tried to tell you. In the same way, the people who are saying, I don't know what happened to my president. I don't know what happened to Trump. I didn't think he would. We tried to tell you. And people are beginning to wake up. Well, that is a great metaphor for what's happening in the Christian space, because Christians are starting to realize my Bible's not telling me the truth. And the counter apologists, the former Christians, those who've deconverted, I'm not sitting over here like just gleefully, like just waiting to say, I told you so. Listen, I will never. I said this. If you're not subscribed or follow me on Facebook or friends on Facebook, you miss half of what I'm doing online. But I tell folks on Facebook, I will never tell a person who's a believer who ends up seeing the BS and they start deconstructing or deconvert. I will never tell someone in that position, see, told you, dummy. You will never hear that from me. With humility, with open arms, all I will say to the person who says, yo, I see it now. All I will say to that person is welcome to humanity. Not that you were not human before, but part of what it means to be part of humanity is to acknowledge the answers that we don't have. I thought we knew this. I thought we knew how life began, how the universe began. I thought we had answers, and now I'm realizing that we don't. One, you realize the answers we don't have, and then two, you start to accept the answers we do have. Oh, we have figured out some things about our genetics and how closely linked we are to the rest of the animal kingdom, and we've figured some things out. I can accept what we figured out so far. That's just part of humanity. I say welcome. Christians are beginning to wake up and realize I can't trust this Bible as a source for truth. But there are other people in the believing community who they see the Exodus. They see that people are beginning to wake up, and they're putting, like I said yesterday, or the part one of this episode, they're trying to put all kind of barriers and barricades up against the church door to keep you in. And so they're trying to tell you, here's why you could still trust the Bible. One of the things that's funny to me about the Trump administration is they fail consistently. But if you're not going to be critical, if you're not going to be skeptical, you allow them to fail up. So that even if they tank the stock market, you have to look at that and say, well, maybe it needed the tank because maybe we were too, whatever you say to justify why this bad thing is now a good thing. So Trump did a dinner at Mar-a-Lago a few days ago over the weekend, charged people all this money in cryptocurrency, made hundreds of millions of dollars just this weekend in cryptocurrency. And people are starting to say, yo, right wingers are starting to say this is a scam. He's using the presidency to scam the American people. The sycophants on that side of the aisle are saying, well, look, when Joe Biden was in office, he was doing crooked things. He had his son getting put on boards of foreign companies. He was doing all that stuff and not telling us about it. At least Trump is showing us what he's doing. It's like, wait, that's not necessarily better. Like you're allowing him to fail up. People have made videos of Trump saying in the past all kinds of things, whether it be about Hillary Clinton, whether it be about Biden, whether it be about Democrats, all these things he's saying. He's villainizing Hillary Clinton for taking money from Qatar. She should give the money back. Look at how they treat women. Look at how they treat homosexuals. Look at how she shouldn't take any money from. She should give it back. Then Trump comes and says, it'd be stupid of me not to take a $400 million jet from Qatar. Like, you're beginning to see you're failing in the same ways that you were willing to say other people were failing, but because you're doing it, we're going to count your failures as victories. We're going to allow you to fail up. Well, sorry for the long intro, but that is exactly what is happening with the Bible. People are beginning to realize, oh, it wasn't right about this. Oh, that can't be true. Oh, this is a contradiction. Well, maybe that's just more proof of God's incomprehensibility. The fact that I can't understand it, the fact that I can't reconcile this verse with this verse, the fact that I see how it's not literally true. Maybe it's just more pointing to just how much grander the mystery actually is. What was a failure, or what would be a failure if some other religion had this trait, if some other holy book had this trait, the failure becomes a triumph in your eyes. This is just now more proof of God's incomprehensibility. So with that in mind, What this is going to be is, like I said, the Jude 3 project. This is a project of Black Christians. They like to fancy themselves, people that they have on their platform, urban apologists. And we all know that urban is really just another name for Black. But the urban apologists are doing what they can to shore up faith, to shore up the faith of the faithful as people are beginning to doubt. So even as I go through this series on this Eminem principle, and I made the point on part 1 of this series, I'm not at all taking anything away from Eminem as an artist, as a lyricist, as a rapper. He is one of the best, if not the best. But I also have to take into account there are things that his whiteness allows him to get away with that somebody else would not be able to get away with. So that's the principle that we're getting at here. And when I talk about whiteness, I have to say something. Allow me to make this point before you hear me say this and then run screaming like, oh, that's what he said, I'm out of here. Listen to me. I hate whiteness. I need you to hear what I'm saying when I say that. And I'm really going to stick my foot in my mouth with this one, because there are people who are probably going to try to take this snippet and say, you heard what he said? Because there's a caveat there. I hate whiteness and I love Blackness. Now think about how crazy it is to say that. Trust me, I understand how crazy it is. But until you understand what I mean when I say this, you might want to just slow down a little bit. Here's what I mean when I say I hate whiteness. I don't hate white people at all whatsoever. I don't. But I understand how whiteness became a thing, because there was a time when whiteness was not a thing. The British hated the Scottish, hated the Polish, whiteness was not a thing. One of my favorite books is a book called Making Whiteness. They walk through how whiteness became a thing, particularly in this country, particularly because of slavery. When Americans of European descent got it in their head that, you know what, the lower classes of Blacks and lower classes of whites, if they band together, they will outnumber us. They used to have white slaves in this country. They saw lower class whites and lower class Blacks banding together and said, we've got to do something to drive a wedge between the lower classes. This is why and when they invented whiteness. Because if we can give some people of European descent who are in the lower class, if we could bump them up on the social ladder scale and make them higher than these other people, these Black people, they don't necessarily need to be as high as the upper class. Let's just make them higher than these people here with this Black skin. So they made whiteness. And here's the thing that you realize as you look at American history. Throughout the 20th century, they widened the welcome mat for who they were willing to let on this mat of whiteness. There was a time when the Irish were not considered white in this country. There was a time when Italians were not considered white in this country. There was a time when Eastern European Jews were not considered white in this country. But they widened that path, that welcome mat, because they realized we need more numbers to keep the lower classes that we want to keep under our boot. To keep them down, we need to get more people voting for whiteness. And because they created whiteness and then widened the gap for who we're going to allow to be considered white, for a very long time, Blackness was despised, not just by white people, by Black people. You go back and look at Black artists in the 1940s, 50s, and you see them straightening their hair, putting this process in their hair to make their hair look more European. It wasn't until the 1960s with Malcolm X trying to help Black people to realize Black is beautiful. that people started actually letting their black hair grow out and rocking afros and learning to love blackness. We had to learn to love blackness because of whiteness. So when I say I hate whiteness, but I love blackness, blackness is a response to whiteness. So let your sociology, like, I don't know what's happening in the chat right now. Are y'all killing me in the chat for saying these things? I hope not. I hope you're at least curious enough to say, is there any truth to what this guy is saying here? And you go and you research it yourself. I have to make those points because that is if you can understand that, you will be able to trace the metaphor, the analogy that I'm trying to work out here for why, when you turn around to the Bible, why would you let the Bible off the hook? Why would you let the Bible do things to make a case for its truthfulness and the reality that it's trying to present to you and the God of the Bible, when you would not make these same allowances for someone else? In the same way that you could understand, we've made allowances for whiteness that we don't make for blackness. If you can get that principle, you might be able to understand when I start saying the Bible fails in so many ways that if you held it to the same standard that you held other things in your life to, you would throw it out as well. With that in mind, we get to turn to the Jude 3 project. If you're still trekking with me, there's probably some people who are like, I can't even listen to you anymore. But if you could understand that, if you could wrestle through and get that, then you might be able to understand how I'm rocking here with this Jude 3. So I'm not going to go extremely long because this Jude 3 video is over an hour. And so I'm going to do this in several parts. And I don't even know how long I'm going to get through this today because I tried to just go through this video and take a few comments to react to. It literally was like every couple of seconds I had to stop because I was taking notes on things I wanted to say. After the fourth stop and taking notes, I was like, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to just watch this video live and react to it with people because it's that chock full of things that you need to put your critical thinking glasses on and look at this and see, does it measure up? All right. So let me look at the chat. Let me see. Boom, boom. Of course, there's. All right. So nobody's necessarily coming for my neck in the chat that I can see, and I'm not taking time to read everything y'all are saying. So maybe I'm wrong, but we're going to dive into this Jude 3 piece and pick it apart.
I'm going to give this question to everyone, and we're just going to go right into where I think a lot of people have questions about in light of things we see in culture and the cultural baggage or assumptions about scripture. Why should...
So just right there, here's what we need to do. We need to realize that the way Christians are framing the problem is a problematic. I'm going to play it again. Listen to what she says.
Actually trust the Bible.
Sorry.
The cultural baggage. Dive right into this conversation. I'm going to give this question to everyone, and we're just going to go right into where I think a lot of people have questions about in light of things we see in culture and the cultural baggage or assumptions about scripture.
So the problem is not that the Bible misrepresents reality. The problem is not that the Bible contradicts itself. The problem is there's cultural baggage and people have assumptions about scripture. If you can downplay what the problem actually is, you change the calculus. You make the people who are in the crowd or people who are watching say, oh, that's all it is. It's just cultural baggage. It's just that people have assumptions and maybe they haven't heard of Wes Huff. If they see Wes Huff, then they'll realize that their assumptions, like maybe they just think like Billy Carson, they've got assumptions about the Bible, but if they heard our scholars and our apologists, we'd set them straight. You're framing the problem in a problematic way because you're not being true to the real issues that people are having with this text that you're telling them. This is God breathed. This is inerrant. This is God's mind in print. This is revelation. all these things you say to make it have more weight than it actually has earned, you're not going to deal with that. You're going to downplay what the problem is. So don't let people do that to you. Don't let people downplay what the problem. And sorry for saying this. This is why I had to make that video last week when I was talking about Derek and Robert, Dr. Price. I can't afford to let you downplay what the issues actually are. If you try to make it seem like, oh, it's just this, I'm talking specifically about the way Dr. Price tried to frame what he thinks is ailing the Black community. If you think it's just this, then you're not going to pay attention to all these other things that need to be addressed. In the same way, I don't let Christians try to downplay, oh, it's just church hurt, that's why you left. Oh, you just wanted to sin, that's why you left. Oh, you just misunderstood. You weren't the right kind of. You're not going to downplay what the problem is. We're going to deal with the actual issues that this documentary faith presents.
Why should we actually trust the Bible?
I'll jump off. Look, one thing that always stuck with me is that Jesus said this collection of literature testifies about him. And so
I always think it's problematic when people say what Jesus said. I had to get into the habit, even on my Facebook, when I talk about Jesus said such and such. I don't frame it that way. Once again, it's always in the framing. When I say what Jesus said, I make sure that you understand that there are quotation marks around this. Jesus supposedly said, they said, Jesus said, so you have no idea what Jesus said because you have no access to Jesus's words. I said this in my interview with JR when he did his Life After Faith video. The Jesus that you have access to is a mediated Jesus. You don't have any direct access to Jesus. Now, I know you might feel like he's in your heart and he's speaking to you, but you have no direct access to what Jesus said when he was on earth. The only Jesus you have is being mediated to you through different mediums. This author says he said this. This author says he said that. So to sit here and say, hey, Jesus said such and such, you're skipping over one of the most difficult questions that you have to answer. Why should you think you have any reason to trust that you know what Jesus said? And then whatever your answer is, why should I think that you have a good reason to think you know what Jesus said? So once again, you're putting the cart before the horse when you just blurt out, hey, Jesus said such and such. You don't know what he said. So if that's what starts his answer, you've got to factor in everything else that he says. You've got to take it with many grains of salt because you have no idea whether or not Jesus said the thing he's about to tell you Jesus said.
if he's crazy enough to believe in this collection of literature.
Oh, sorry. The thing that he says Jesus said is that the Old Testament speaks about him. And we're going to talk about why that's a crazy thing to accept. They put the words in Jesus's mouth that the entire Old Testament, or at least the law and the prophets, testify to him. We're not going to do it today. We're going to get at the prophecies next time. I don't know about tomorrow, but the next time we do this segment. But that's what he's saying so far.
And I'm trying to be his disciple. I think it's a good idea for me to trust what my rabbi says and go along the journey of discovery. And what I've come to know is that he wasn't lying. When I read what we would call the Old Testament, I can't help but to see how this whole thing is moving forward to the Jesus event. And when the Jesus event shows up, man, it's on and crap.
So that took me out when he says, I can't help but to see that Jesus was right. The Old Testament does speak about him all over the place. One of the things that helped me when I was deconstructing and deconverting was getting up on psychology and getting up on social biology. Because if you don't understand the kind of organism that you are, you will think all kinds of things are happening, and you'll explain those things in the vocabulary that your religion provides for you. So there's a verse in the Bible, right? That's I think it's a psalm where the person prays, Lord, open my eyes and help me see wondrous things in your law. And Christians, how many times, if you were a Christian, here's how I know you were the kind of Christian I was, because you can read the Bible and reading, you feel like you're stumbling on to these divine truths. And you tell yourself, that is the Holy Spirit communicating to me and revealing to me. He's opening my eyes to help me see wondrous things in God's law. Is that the case? When I read the Old Testament, I found out that Jesus wasn't lying, because I can't help but see he's right. He's all over the place. If you've ever seen an optical illusion, right? These are some of my favorite things to look at. At first glance, you look at this and you think, oh, look at all these slanted lines. Now, granted, most times you see these kind of things on social media, so there's always a caption that tells you you're wrong. But if there was no caption, you might not even know. Like, you might just look at this and think, oh, what? Slanted lines. So what? If the caption over top says there are no slanted lines, these are all straight lines, all of a sudden your grasp on reality is challenged. You look at that and you say to yourself, wait, what? But then you look a little closer and you follow and you realize, oh, snap, there are no slanted lines here. These are actually all straight lines. Somebody said Kip is in the chat. Where's? Oh, yo, what's up, Dr. Kip? Seems that I've come to the right place. Glad you're here, man. So all I'm saying is, you see these what seem to be slanted lines, and then you realize, oh no, these are straight lines. Well, why is this happening? Turns out that your brain, my brain, the brain, all your brain is doing is basically trying to make sense of your world. And the kind of organisms that we are, what your brain is developed to do is create shortcuts. This is the reason why you could read somebody's text, right? You read the text, you'll say, okay, and then they'll text you back and say, sorry for the typos. And you'll be like, what typos? And then you read the text again, you're like, oh, shoot, I didn't realize there were typos all through this. Why? Because your brain has developed in such a way that it's trying to just develop shortcuts, because the kind of organisms that we are the kinds of things that one of our modus operandi is to conserve energy, because that's how we keep ourselves alive, and that's how we keep ourselves alive. If we can use the least amount of energy possible for a task, that could be anything from creating a nickname for somebody so you don't have to say their full name, to looking at a image like this and just assuming, oh, slanted lines. You're not going to take the time to trace everything and realize, no, these are straight lines, because your brain is just developed shortcuts. I said all that to get to this point. The brain sees what it wants to see, and it wants to see what's going to take the least amount of energy to figure this thing out. So if I tell you Jesus is all through the Old Testament, all the law, all the prophets speak of him, and you get it in your head that that's what you should be seeing, you know what your brain is going to do? Your brain is going to develop shortcuts to help you get to that point quicker, because you're trying to conserve energy. No, Jesus is not all over the Old Testament. I said his name yesterday, and I'll say it again because I love what he's doing. If you go watch Justin, Deconstruction Zone, this dude specializes in doing the very thing that I used to hate trying to do. He specializes in going through the Old Testament, quote unquote, messianic prophecies and showing people how you're taking this verse way out of context to get Jesus out of this passage here. And I remember, I'm just going to tell myself here, I just like telling on myself sometimes. When I was a Christian, I remember saying, like, I would read New Testament passages and they would say this was done so that this verse could be fulfilled, or this was done so that the scripture could be fulfilled when it says such and such. And I'd be like, man, one day I need to take the time to actually go back through and read all these Old Testament passages so that I could give God more glory, so that I could see, you said this passage in Isaiah was talking about him. You said this passage in Ezekiel. Let me go back and see so that I can see how glorious it is. Then I go back and I look and I realize, like, it don't seem to be saying that, oh, I must have to do some work to get there. But what do I want? I want shortcuts. I don't want to have to do the work. And so as a Christian, I used to say, all right, one day I'll do it. One day when I get to seminary, at some point later on in life, I'm going to go find out how all these verses that the New Testament says are speaking of Jesus, because they have Jesus saying, all the law and prophets testify of me. One day I'm going to do the work to figure out how this is actually the case, because it doesn't look like it's the case. Then when I was in seminary, at some point it dawned on me, like, yo, that one day is now. You're here. You're in the place. You're having lunch with the professors, the seminarians, the Old Testament and New Testament scholars, the Greek scholars, the Hebrew scholars. You're having lunch with these people. This is the time to do the thing that you said one day you were going to do. And when I started trying to do it, it fell apart. All of that just to say, giving Bible God the benefit of the doubt, that when it looks like he's failing, he's actually failing up. The more difficult this task is probably just more indication of my human limitations and his incomprehensibility. And so my limited mind just can't grasp how deep and how. No, that's you allowing this book, this religion, to fail up. That's you giving God the kind of privilege that you would not give some other religion. You would jump on Islam if one of their scholars tried to use the defenses that Christian apologists use for the Bible. On my Facebook page yesterday, I asked a simple question. If you tried, I had a hard time trying to figure out how to word it. I was going to say, if you had to, then I sensed Christians would say, well, why would I have to? Then I was going to say, if you wanted to, then I would sense the Christians saying, why would I want to? So I said, if you tried to debunk the Bible, could you? Because you're trained to defend the Bible. But if you tried to debunk it, could you? And then the end of my post simply said, this apologetic exercise was the end of my faith. I asked the simple question, could I debunk this? Not could somebody else debunk it? Could I debunk this? And within seconds, I started seeing ways I could pull this out. I could pull this out. I could pull that out. And I said, oh, shit. Because I can defend it, sure. But when I realized I can also debunk it, and I had to ask the question, okay, so then why are you defending it? What I want is unassailable. It's tricky because even saying the word truth, you realize you don't necessarily have access to truth with a capital T. You have your perception, you have third-party confirmation, you have repeatability, you have testability, you have the ability to predict things. If you could predict something, if I do X and I get Y, that tells me that I'm on the right track. That's sort of as close as we can come to truth. I was watching The Last of Us. I'm up on that now. And I love this series. I love what they're doing with the storyline. I didn't play the video game. Everybody always asks, did you play the video game? No, I didn't play the video game. I don't play video games. But I love The Last of Us. And they quoted, I think it was Lily Tomlin. They quoted her. And there's a quote that they said, and I think this makes a lot of sense. The quote is, reality is nothing but a collective hunch. Like, think about what that means. Reality is nothing but a collective hunch. Because how do we know that we know what we say we know? Like I said, you have your senses, you have your rationality, but the reason why when something happens, you turn to somebody else like, did you see that? Why? Because at some point you realize, I don't know if I can really trust my senses. That seems so out of the norm, out of the usual, so unbelievable. I don't care whether it was a car crash or whether it was somebody smacked somebody and you're like, yo, what? And you look around, am I seeing what I think I just saw? You want that third party confirmation. Well, that's as close as we can get to reality is I got my senses, I have my rationality, and I want to know, do you see this too? Because if you don't see it too, maybe it's all just happening in my head. Repeatability, testability, predictability, those things help us get closer to reality, but it's really just a collective hunch. And this is why religion is so important, because what religion does is it gathers a bunch of people together to help give you that third party confirmation. But when you really think about what you're confirming, did you hear the voice of God? Well, I think the Holy Spirit is saying to me this. Or did you hear? Did you see? Did you? You're trying to get people together to confirm this experience that you believe you've had. But they're also telling you what this experience should be. So if they're telling you you should find Jesus throughout the entire Old Testament, and then you get together with a bunch of people who confirm that experience, that's a group hunch about reality. That people who've backed away from the religion, who've put the critical thinking skills on, say, nah, you know what? When I look at it, I don't see that. And they challenge what you're willing to call reality. Now, granted, I've said a lot, and we haven't even scratched the surface of this video. So what I'm going to try to do for the sake of time is not jump at everything they say that makes me say we need to pump the brakes. But I'm probably going to go for another maybe 10 minutes just on trying to get further because I want to get through this entire video. But really, I wanted to lay the groundwork because what I'm trying to do is help somebody else out. I want to help somebody else out realize that I don't need to be doing this. I don't need to be giving this kind of benefit of the doubt to this book, to this religion, to these apologists, to this way of seeing the world. The collective hunch about reality, you realize how small the religious collective hunch actually is and how incapable it is at speaking to the reality that we actually live in. Diving back in.
So, with that said, if we want to know what leads to flourishing for one another, if we want to know what leads to true life as a community, it's all found in the words of.
See, that community, that collective hunch. I'm going to selectively choose who I'm going to allow to help me construct my collective hunch. Are you a theist? Are you a Christian theist? Are you my kind of Christian theist? If so, I'm going to allow you into my huddle, and then we can collectively construct our hunch together. We're not going to allow the outside voices to speak into this situation.
This text that we call the Bible. So that's why I think I trust it.
And I'm not picking on them, but notice the weak clap. Notice why should we trust the Bible was the question. He gives his answer, and they're almost like, wait, is that it? Like, is that? Oh, okay. I thought you were going to give me more. These are the people you're looking to help you try to decide how we going to get our collective hunch together. Okay, I guess so.
There is a category in theology where we talk about the creator-creature distinction. So one of the things we know about God is that he's different from humans. He's ontologically different, which means the only way you can have access to him is if he condescends and reveals himself to you. And in the Bible, like my brother said,
that used to make me so excited as a Christian, this idea of the creator-creature distinction and there being this infinite gap between the two. That buys God room to be wrong, to lie, to be evil, all kinds of things, because the creature cannot say to the creator, why have you made me like this? And the creature can't wrap its mind around the creator. So you just have to give God the latitude to be different and do things different than you would do. One of my favorite verses was, as the heavens are higher than the earth, So are my ways and my thoughts higher than yours, says the Lord. Excuse me. The only problem with that, though, is it'd be one thing if God showed up and said to us, hey, you see how different I am? You see how high and mighty I am? You see how lofty? Just know that that gap between us represents my thinking versus yours. I think at that point we'd have to be like, oh, cool. But if all you have is human beings coming to tell you that God's lofty, that God's so much higher, that God's so much different, then how do I know that this is a creator-creature distinction and not a creature-creature distinction? These are other creatures like me telling me about the creator and how different he is. It's not creator-creature distinction, it's creature-creature. Let God speak for himself. You don't get to come and speak to me in a God tone and expect me to bow down as if God spoke. That is what religion bids you to do. Religion bids you to treat the words of people like the words of God, to have all for God because of what people are saying to you. And I can't do that. I used to do that. I won't do that anymore.
This actually affirms the scriptures. So if Jesus is God, he is the revealed God, and he affirms it, then I have I can't do anything but trust it, because Jesus said it is actually.
It's the if. If Jesus is God, I can't do anything but trust the scripture because Jesus said I should trust it. How do you come to the conclusion that Jesus is God? If then, okay, but you haven't demonstrated your if. You're taking your if by faith.
Yeah, the ontological distinctions of the sacred text.
I love this from Kip. Says, yeah, no. The prevailing thought in ancient Near East is that the gods are like us, just bigger. I could flip it that we're like the gods, just smaller. That's the whole idea of being made in the image of God. I remember one time, one of the guys who used to be in the rap group that I was a part of, when I deconverted, he tried to challenge me on the whole idea of man being made in the image of God. He's like, what do you think? God is just a bigger version of us? Like Kip is making the point. No, that's sort of what they thought. The reason why they could use the term image of God was evangelicals try to pour all this theological meaning into image of God. Well, image really just talks about we have will, emotion, and what is it? Will, emotion, and I forget the other thing that they say. That's what they mean. Or people like John Walton, that image is talking about our function, not our ontology. But no, in the ancient Near East, they literally thought that humanity, or at least the king in some ways, was an image of the invisible God. Like when you see how nonsensical, it's funny. Let me make this point. By Christians doing all of this apologetic work to make the Bible more believable, they actually help you realize how unbelievable it is. Because for years, they tried to get us out of the mindset of image means God, we're shaped like God. That's literally what image means. Christians didn't like that at some point. They realized, they began to get the idea that that was ignoble, to think that God had a shape, that God had a body, right? So we can't allow that idea to permeate through the culture. So we have to start saying things to get us off of this physical image of God, man being a physical image of God. So they make all of these theological explanations for what image is. Then you get a hold of ancient Near Eastern literature and you realize, no, image really did mean physical form. Then you have to reconcile that with what the apologists told you. They said it wasn't physical form because that would be crazy. That would be ludicrous to think God had a body. But now you realize, no, that's what it actually meant. And now you have to try to reconcile what the apologists and theologians told you with what the literature actually says. The apologists are shooting themselves in the foot because they're helping us realize, no, you were right. It is ludicrous to think that there's this super huge being shaped like one of us. Like that's a little crazy. They make God out to be he's omnipresent, he's without form, he's spirit, he's all these things, and now you got to reconcile that with him having a body, and the two can't coexist at the same time. Well, what does that do? That destroys the documentary faith. But what do when we want to defend it? We allow God to fail up. Yeah, that doesn't make sense, but I'm going to chalk that up as just more mystery that makes God more grand than I thought he was actually in the first place. Hey, so we're pulling up on an hour here, and I didn't want this to go too much beyond or even close to an hour. I'm trying to figure out what's more watchable for people, long form or short form. So even though we haven't even scratched the surface, you can see how much time we could spend. This is just the first question on the panel of should we trust the Bible? Like, we've got a lot of work to do here. So we're going to be coming back to this a few times. I am going to be getting back to raising the bar. So I got some lyrics I want to dissect as well. But I guess I'll be going back and forth between these two. So rather than spend way more time on this, I'm going to call it here and let you guys go and enjoy your day or your evening when you're watching this, because I'm going to do the same thing. Normally, when I get off of here, I typically say, I'm going to go live my life, or I say, I wish you love and logic and light. I really do want to help people just go live their lives. Imagine you not having to spend the kind of time that you've been spending trying to make sense of a holy book that put together all these ideas that we now know. You can't defend this. There's a guy who wrote a book. Maybe I should hold off bringing this up. I'll hold off bringing this up. So yeah. But when I left Christianity, I said, I'm going to go live my life. And I've been doing that ever since. I love my life now. I enjoy my life now. I own me. I used to think I belonged to God. My thoughts belonged to God. My inner world belonged to God. My money belonged to God. My talent belonged to God. My relationships belonged to God. And I was just a steward of these things. My thoughts, I was just a steward of them, but they really were bare before God. That is an oppressive way to live. And I know if you're in it, you don't see it as oppression. All I can say is take it from the people who've left that behind. You don't know freedom. You don't know liberation. Now, maybe you became a Christian and you feel like you were freed from sin. And I credit religion with helping people to distance themselves from self-destructive ways. I give it credit for that. But if in your attempt to help people back away from self-destructive ways, you also introduce destructive ways, you tell them that they're sinful by nature. You tell them that in their flesh, no good thing dwells. You tell them that their righteousness is as filthy rags. If you have to introduce harmful ideas to help people, I would say that by now, at least, can't we develop, if we don't already have, better ways to help people distance themselves from self-destructive tendencies, or the tendencies that don't just destroy self, but also harm others? One of the things that the guy that we just watched said was, he said, I trust the Bible because this is one of the best ways to help us to see how to move towards flourishing in our community. That's a very pragmatic reason to trust the Bible. I think if pragmatism is your goal, there are more pragmatic ways to accomplish those goals. And that's what people in the community who are deconverting and distancing themselves from using faith as their guide to truth, and they end up embracing things like secular humanism, and that's all we're after. We're just trying to human better and make humans more humane. And so that being the case, I'm going to pause there and see if there's anything in the chat I need to pay attention to. I'm going to scroll through it real quick, but super chats definitely help me see. Marissa, thank you for the $5 super chat. Christianity and whiteness avoid truth by any means necessary, The reflection functions to sacralize a nationalistic ideology. That's why Trump is their guy. If you just tuned in and you read that comment, you're like, yo, she came out of left field with that. Go back and watch the beginning. I talked about whiteness and how it was created and how it's being used. I'm open to anybody's like, yo, I don't think you should have said that. Or I think you could have. Let's have dialogue about these things. I'm not here to offend anyone, but I do think they're things that we can educate ourselves on about the history of how we got to where we are, and where do we want to go from here, and how do we get there? So I appreciate Marissa's comment. All right, I don't see any other super chats there. I saw Michael Beverly slide through. What's up, Michael Beverly? Pay attention to this. We love you, Brady. Don't stop. And Michael he's dropped the series that I was a part of. Go check out Michael on his channel. A series responding to Christian apologists defending slavery in the Bible. All right. I'll be back Thursday evening for Exit Strategy, and I'll be back next Monday and Tuesday for these lunchtime pop-ups. Hey, I love you guys, and I hope you have a great day. I'll catch you next time. Drop a comment, like, subscribe. Peace.